Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview from my capstone, Shining a Light on Fanconi Anemia. I'm Alex, and I'm here with local Fanconi Anemia family, the McQueens. And I guess we could start off by if you guys want to introduce yourselves to the people watching.
Sure, I'll start. I'm Lorraine McQueen. Yes, Alex said here in Richmond, Virginia, we're just about 15, 20 minutes or so with Alex and his family. And this is my son Sean, who's 22, has FA, and husband
Kevin
Kevin.
McQueen, father of Sean. Sean, say hi.
Hey.
And I'm Kelsey, Sean's sister, and I'm 24.
And living in Boston right now.
Yes, I do not live at home currently.
And does not have FA.
I do not have FA either.
Well, if you're noteworthy in the FA context.
Yes.
I'm Sean. I have FA.
And you go to Ferrum College, right?
Yes.
And a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, as I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't even just dress up for this. He actually wears a lot of Steeler gear.
Noted.
Yeah.
All right, so my first question for you guys is, when did you find out about Sean having FA?
Well, Sean was diagnosed when he was just over a year old, but when I was pregnant, the last month or so of pregnancy, we kind of had an inkling that something was wrong. Basically, I just wasn't getting a lot of weight and he wasn't getting very large. So that started the process of trying to investigate what was going on. But no one had really heard of FA. It was not suspected. We really had no idea. But because he wasn't growing well in utero, they induced me a little bit early, gave me some medication to help his lungs develop, and basically decided that we should just, give birth and then kind of figure out from there what was going on. So Sean was about 3.5 pounds when he was born, and so was in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit for a few weeks. And during that period of time, there was all kinds of testing done to try to figure out what it was, genetic testing and just all kinds of testing. But they honestly had no idea. And they discharged him at that point, I think it still is, the discharge parameters are like, you have to be at least 4 pounds to be discharged. So once he was sufficient weight, they sent us home and still didn't really have any idea. And then we just sort of continued to sort of try to figure it out. But it took about a year with a lot of consultation with a lot of specialists from around the state, and a lot of our own investigation. But we took him back to see the geneticist when he was just about a year old, and it just kind of, she sort of, it dawned on her, kind of connected the dots. Actually, what had happened is I had mentioned to her that he had a very faint freckle on his chin, which was really not at all noteworthy, but we were just grasping at straws, any little clue. And I happened to mention it to her, and I said, what, it just strikes me a little bit odd. And at the time she said, yeah, it's not, nothing. And then that was kind of the clue that helped her put it together. And then she kind of then sent us a letter and said, I think we should test him for this disease, and wound up doing blood work, and he tested positively, and that was the beginning.
So what was your experience like? So you found out about it and then discovering more about it, FA, how were you able to kind of dive into what it was or what it is?
We somehow got connected with the FA Research Fund. I think we Googled it up and saw that, contacted them, and they actually put us in touch with another family from Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And so we had a conversation with them, and the mom kind of told us their story. And then we found out about the FA camp, which at the time was outside of Chicago. And we decided to go to that there for our first year. And that's when we really got introduced to other families and met doctors and really kind of got involved with the research fund. Mm-hmm. So really connecting through them, that's who got us kind of connected with the community.
Which really at that time was huge, because as I said, there really was no information online. There was there was nothing to look up. There was no research. There was nothing. So really having that sort of face-to-face connection with not only the other families, but some of the doctors. And there was only a handful of researchers at that time. So that kind of opened up the whole world and helped us navigate the path a little bit to sort of figure out next steps.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was.
Can you still like explain, I guess, like a little bit like what Fanconi Anemia Research Fund is, like what FARF is, and like how it was started?
I can try
Kevin
that
can
one.
take that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the research fund was founded by Dave and Lynn Frommeyer, a prominent couple from Oregon. Dave used to be the Attorney General of Oregon and ran for governor of Oregon and was the president of University of Oregon.
And a Rhodes Scholar.
And a Rhodes Scholar, very smart guy, lawyer. And his wife is also very smart. And they, as Lorraine mentioned, they had 5 children, 3 daughters, 2 boys. Both boys did not have FA, but all 3 daughters did. And before, this was probably in the 80s. I should know exactly when it was founded.
89, I believe.
There was no information anywhere. There was no resources. They knew a few families. And so they were able to, they said, hey, we need to create something to connect families and connect researchers. Fortunately, Dave Frommeyer is friends with Phil Knight, and Phil Knight is the founder of Nike. So a very wealthy individual, very prominent person.
And very generous.
Very generous. And Phil, knew their kids and was able to donate several $1 million to kind of get the foundation started way back when. And Dave and Lynn were very, having been in academia, he was at the time president of the University of Oregon, was able to connect with researchers, prominent researchers around the country, and actually went to the lab that Kelsey's working at. The doctor that runs Kelsey's lab was one of the first doctors he talked to, Dr. DeAndrea, who's a DNA, researcher guy, and was able to recruit him to study this disease. And over time, they kind of recruit other doctors, and then created this community. And then, as the organization kept maturing, they were able to bring more family. There's a place for families that Google it and they see FA Research Fund. So it started doing a lot of things to bring families together. Summer camp for help families, share information and connect. But also they have a symposium every year where they bring doctors and researchers from really around the world together, usually about 200 to 300 around the world, to share the latest findings and collaborate. So it's really been impressive what they've been able to do.
Wow. I didn't even know, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Kelsey. So I was wondering, like, how has your life been impacted by having Sean, your brother, with FA?
I don't know. That's a good question, but I guess obviously kind of a loaded question. I mean, I guess the short of it is that I think most of my life, probably 90% of it, has been pretty drastically, good and bad, I guess, just by having a sibling with a rare disease. Thankfully, up until the last couple of years, Sean has been very stable health-wise. So it's not like I know other FA siblings have their siblings in and out of the hospital all the time and things like that. So thankfully we've been lucky and have not really had that experience. That's been good. But it definitely has sort of shaped, I guess, my career path. As my dad mentioned, I work now in a lab that studies Fanconi anemia, and I'm hoping to go to get my master's in genetic counseling, which also I think I would not have discovered that field or career or anything like that without Camp Sunshine and also having a sibling with a genetic disease. So I think for sure those are probably the big things. And I think just in general too, on like a day-to-day level, I think that, and I'm sure you kind of understand this too, I think my perspective is a lot different than my peers, just kind of on life and my relationship with my family and time and things like that. And I think that it has definitely, I think all of those sort of experiences I would not have obviously gone through without having the sibling with FA or any genetic disease. So yeah.
I agree. It kind of can put a whole different like perspective on your life, I guess, with how time and like the meaning of it, and just getting introduced like with a rare disease like this, it just molds your entire life.
Yeah, exactly.
What unique challenges have you guys faced with Fanconi anemia?
Sean, what challenges have you faced?
Going to the hospital all the time. say.
From the hospital a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. To do blood draws every quarter and bone marrow biopsies once a year. Are you taller than most of your friends?
No.
So you are shorter than most. You got a funky thumb there.
It's true.
Exactly. The funky thumb thing.
It's kind of an FA thing.
It's kind of hard to find a hat that fits. Your head's a little smaller than certainly your dad's. My head's a little bit bigger. And then what's happened the past couple of years, Sean? That's unusual for FA, even in the small group of FA.
Having a brain inflammation. I don't know how to get that.
Well, it looked like you had a brain tumor. We thought you had a cancerous brain tumor back there. And this is a newly appreciated sort of complication with FA. So that's caused a lot of challenges in terms of balance and walking and some vision loss and some other things like that. So that's something a newly appreciated complication that we're trying to research, but we're finding now there's a handful, like 6 or so known cases in the US of similar things that Sean has. So it's just the disease that keeps on giving. So it's, and Sean's fortunate in a lot of ways because he has not required a bone marrow transplant yet, which is somewhat not unheard of, but unusual for being 22 years old, and his blood counts have been stable and good, which is good.
How did you initially figure out or learn that Sean had the brain inflammation?
Sean, you want to start the story? We can help you out. Where did it all happen? What were you doing?
I was playing basketball at my high school, and I hit one of my teammates, and I fell down, and I just couldn't get up.
Mhm.
And they picked him up and kind of brought him to the bench, and he kind of got back to normal, right? And
like 15, 20 minutes.
yeah, after about 10 minutes or
But
so.
he kind of lost sensation in his whole left side of his body.
So we decided that it'd be best to take him to check to the emergency room to check him out, just because there's no fear, there's no concern about brain tumors or brain. It was an unknown thing in FA, but so let's just get an MRI just to be doubly sure. And that's when we saw what looked like a very large mass, and it looked kind of like a cancer tumor, and that's what we thought it was. And then we ended up going to Johns Hopkins up in Baltimore, and they did a biopsy. They drilled a little hole and plucked a little piece of what they thought was a cancerous tumor out, and turned out, good news, it wasn't cancerous. It was this kind of inflammatory gunk. And through that process, we put things on Caring Bridge, which is a site, if you have medical issues, you can kind of put out so your friends can track it. But a lot of we talked to a couple of doctors that we know in the FA community, and we learned that a couple other people were dealing with something somewhat similar. So then we kind of connected the dots and said, oh, wow, this is a new thing. And so now since then, a few other cases have come forward, and we've been working with doctors and bringing some new neurologists into the field to help us, because typically in the FA field, the doctors are bone marrow transplanters, hematologists, oncologists, head and neck cancer specialists. There's not a lot of people that are familiar with FA that deal with the brain. So now we're trying to recruit some new scientists to sort of help us out and try to get the bottom of it.
Yeah, and a little bit like on the topic, like, what do you think has been the biggest advancement so far in FA treatment that you've seen? What has been something that's really pushed over the edge?
In FA?
Yeah.
Well, when we first went to camp back in Chicago, when Sean was very young, the doctors would meet with the parents and kind of present the latest findings. And a lot of the doctors, the primary focus was on bone marrow transplants. And a bone marrow transplant for anyone is really a very dangerous proposition. But for FA kids, because their cells don't repair themselves via chemo, the normal process that you do for normal people, it doesn't work for FA kids. So at the time when we were first there, they were saying the survival rate of a bone marrow transplant back then was about 18%. So you had a 82% chance that you were going to die. It was kind of your last ditch effort. You tried to do everything you could to avoid bone marrow transplant. There were some big breakthroughs. A drug called fludarabine that really transformed the bone marrow transplant process to make it much safer and much more tolerable for FA kids. And now that survival rate is in the 90s. And it depends a little bit if you have a sibling match, or if it's an unrelated match. But in all the cases, it's been a dramatic improvement. So now we have many adults that have many FA adults that we didn't have. So that's probably been by far the biggest advancement. There's some exciting things with gene therapy that look promising, that are on the horizon. There's been a few trials that look pretty interesting. And of course, the next big hurdle is battling cancer in the mouth and esophagus.
Yeah, that makes sense. What like FA fundraising events are you guys all involved with?
Well, your golf tournament, we went to
Exactly.
That's yeah.
So we started our very first event, 20 years ago. We did like a casino night kind of thing. I mean, we really felt, one, we just needed to do something because it was a way to try to work towards a solution. And we really felt like, our friends and family, really did want to help. So anyway, we were able to mobilize some friends and family pretty quickly and started doing, just sort of a variety of different events. We kind of called we came up with this Play for FA. The Fanconi Anemia Research Fund is such a mouthful and people don't have, of course, so unfamiliar, no one knows what that is. Anyway, we kind of came up with this idea of sort of Play for FA and have sort of tried to incorporate a couple different kinds of events. We've done casino nights, live auctions, silent auctions, wine tastings. We did a bunch of golf tournaments. We did a golf tournament even many years ago before we knew you guys.
Mhm.
And we did that for a couple years. Kevin recently did a bike race, century ride, 100-mile ride.
Climb Mount
with some
Rainier back in
friends,
the
climb
day.
Mount Rainier.
Kelsey and Sean climb Mount Washington.
Right, we've done some other family
Up in
climbs.
New Hampshire. So we've done a number of those types of things.
So, and other sort of letter writing campaigns and, softer sort of things. But, we've for the most part, have had an event, a chicken stock, most every year. COVID has obviously thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench in that situation. So we'll have to be creative. But hopefully within the next year or so, we can get back to doing something. But we've had great friends and it's been great to be able to team up with you guys, you and Jacqueline and your parents, and just be able to kind of work together towards, a common cause and common solution. And, your mom and I and your parents, all of which worked closely together these last couple of years, and pulled off some really fun, successful events. So
yeah, I agree.
Keep at it.
So I keep chipping away.
Exactly.
Speaking of like my parents, I was wondering, how did you guys like first get connected with my parents, with my family?
I think they contacted the research fund, again, Googled that up, and then the research fund contacted us and said, hey, there's a family locally in the area. Would you be open to meeting with them? Of course, we said, no, absolutely not. And of course, we said yes. And then I think I'm not quite sure who contacted who, but that's how, yeah. So that's oftentimes what FARF will do. They'll try to connect a family locally, just so they can meet and so forth.
And as I recall, you might remember the timing better than I do, Alex, but as I recall, it was, within 2 or 3 weeks of when we were planning one of our big events.
Yes.
Well, wasn't it right before Easter when Jack?
It was right before Easter, which is about the time that you were diagnosed, right, Alex?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think I had been in contact with your mom and talked on the phone a couple times, and then they wound up coming to our FA event,
Mm-hmm.
and then we met maybe once or twice, and then I think that's when you went off to transplant, and then obviously have been great friends and kept in touch since that time.
Yeah.
But it all kind of, as you know, for them,
Happened
kind of
pretty
came down pretty quickly, and then I think, as I said, they came to our FA event with 200 FA supporters, and then within just weeks of even learning about the disease. So it was a lot, but
It was a lot, yeah.
but worked out, to be a good thing. but then a not so good thing. It's a positive development, I guess, in terms of being able to connect and
Yeah. One positive about FA is, I mean, that our families have been brought together. It's really nice to be working like alongside you guys for the common good.
yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
All right, I have a question for you, Sean. I was wondering, so that you're at Ferrum College, how has the college life been for you?
Um, I've been mostly online since I've started,
Yeah.
and I've been staying at home a lot. Um,
Well, last year you were on campus.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Sean's a sophomore now. Last year he was on campus. So you could speak to last year.
Last year was fun. It was a lot of work, but it was fun. It's fun hanging out with friends.
Unfortunately, Sean's year got a little derailed college-wise this year, actually even independent of COVID. But what had happened is we mentioned this brain inflammation that he's been battling, and we've been doing MRIs, pretty much since this fall, 2.5 years ago at the basketball game. We've just been able to monitor it through MRIs to sort of get a sense of what's going on in here. And just before he was getting ready to leave for college this past August, even though the inflammation had sort of been going down a little bit and things looked pretty stable, it was starting to creep back up a little bit. So we had been doing MRIs like every 3 to 4 months. So we wanted to keep a closer track on it. So we did an MRI in October. So I picked him up from school to come home for the MRI in October with the idea, he'd be home for the doctor's appointment and go back and stay home for the weekend and go back on Monday or something. But the level of inflammation had increased significantly to kind of a dangerous level. We immediately had to go to the ER and
Go back on steroids.
In high doses. And so anyway, so he unfortunately hasn't really been back since October. He came home for a doctor's appointment and here he is. Now, the good news is because of COVID, classes are online, so he's able to finish a semester online and all of that. But FA definitely derailed the college experience this year, unfortunately. But we'll see. Hopefully, as did COVID, of course.
We're hoping if Sean can get vaccinated and remain stable, that he can go back to school for the second half of the semester after spring break in or March, late March timeframe. So we'll see.
Just gonna have to wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, I hope that you were able to go back after the first semester ends and finish out to your sophomore year in school.
Yeah.
Obviously, been difficult for everybody in college now with COVID. It's a different experience than it was.
As is high school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's.
Everybody. It's just
a crazy time.
Crazy time.
All right. I have a question about Camp Sunshine. So I'll just explain that real quick. Camp Sunshine is like it's a camp that families with different diseases go to for an extended weekend, and it's filled with activities for the kids to do, and they can meet up with other kids with the same disease as them. And for adults, it's more so seminars and different meetings about the disease and like catching up and understanding what it is. But I was wondering what you guys have, like what camp has meant to you and how you guys have experienced camp.
Kelsey, why don't you start?
And Sean, you want to start?
Kelsey start, maybe Sean, and Mom and Dad.
Okay. I love camp, and it's funny, I guess, because Sean and I both went to it's now in Maine, but we went to the previous site outside of Chicago for a couple years. And when I was little, I did not really like it because I did not like being separated from my parents. But over the years, it's been definitely like the highlight of my year. Actually, I think this past year when they officially announced, not that it was a surprise at all, but when they officially announced that camp was going to be canceled for this past summer, I think that was probably like in quarantine. That was one of my very, very low days because it was just really sad, I think, because it's just a great place, and I think also a great resource. And for Sean, I'm sure he feels, and you, Alex, and I mean, I feel this way too, just having some sort of common ground with people. I mean, you guys, your family, Alex, is like pretty much the only other family locally that we know with anything similar to what Sean has. I think being able to be around a lot of different people with that has been awesome. Also, I entirely owe my pretty much career and current job to Camp Sunshine. Dr. DeAndrea is like I said, a researcher, and he presents every year at Camp Sunshine, and that's how I got connected with him and how he allowed me to come work in his lab. And then also at camp, they have a couple like psychosocial resources, and that's how I met a bunch of genetic counselors and was sort of exposed to that field. And ultimately was pretty much probably the biggest influence, I guess, in me deciding to try to pursue that as a career myself. And then I think also too, it's probably not as big, I guess, for in the last couple of years, but they also do really great work with being able to test different, collect samples, I guess, from different patients, because obviously, what other time would you have that many FA patients, siblings, parents, any of the above in one, confined area for a certain amount of time. So I think that also has been really cool to see, just working now in research, how I now understand how precious samples are and patient samples are. So being able to see it from that perspective too, camp is definitely a huge resource, I think, for families and patients and things like that, but also just from a research perspective too. It's really awesome.
What about you, Sean? What camp meant to you?
Camp is definitely one of my favorite things, and one of the things I look forward to every year. We, as kids, mostly just like play games with other people, do activities, make connections with friends that have FA. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's also hugely valuable as Kelsey kind of alluded to, from a research perspective, because it gives researchers an opportunity to sort of, share their findings, their theories, their thoughts, and sort of really collaborate and sort of give them the opportunity to sort of all be together, brainstorm a bit, and then kind of go back to their labs and be able to follow up. So in addition to just getting samples, just that sort of collaborative experience with all the researchers being together.
Yeah.
As well as for parents, and I think even for the researchers to be able to hear from patients and families, about their experiences. I think it helps make their research a little bit more, I don't know, what's the word? Real, valuable. They sort of see the human effect of it all. And I think, keeps them a little inspired, to be able to instead of just looking at cell lines, they're actually looking at children and humans and families, and kind of helps and maybe keeps them energized, as well as sort of gain some information, not only just cells, but sort of just talking about, symptoms and the subtleties that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on otherwise, unless you're physically present. So
it's a great place.
Yeah, tons of fun there. It's one of personally, it's something I've looked forward to every summer for so many years now. And I mean, I was so bummed that it was canceled last year. I was looking forward to seeing everyone, and because I'm almost out of the teen group, I don't even know what I'm gonna be doing next year.
Here,
right.
I know I might be volunteering.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And I got one more question for you, Sean. I was just wondering, referencing your sweatshirt there, what's going on with the Steelers, man? What's is Big Ben done? Is Ben Roethlisberger, is he finished? What's going on?
He's supposedly coming back for another year.
One more year.
Do you want that?
He's getting old, and he didn't play well in his last game. I kind of want him to come back for another year because he's just good, but he didn't play well.
We were 11-0 for a period of time, so we have to recapture that magic. We'll be back. Give Ben one more year.
All right.
One more year.
One more year of magic.
Exactly. You feel you got a strong receiving core, a few adjustments, we're ready to go.
Yeah, all right.
What about Carson Wentz? I mean, what's the deal with Carson?
There's some reports that he wants out of Philadelphia. We don't really know.
Do you have a Wentz jersey?
I do have a Wentz jersey.
All right.
I don't know how long I'll have a Wentz jersey. But
Yeah, we'll
that's
see.
a tough situation there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is all the questions I have for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and just talking with me, having this conversation. I appreciate it so much.